In the years since the global world of film has become more accessible, online on 1,000 balkanized streaming platforms, the term Bollywood has come to be associated with Indian filmmaking. However, as India is a country with 22 official languages and 1.4 billion people, and Bollywood is a term that specifically refers to Hindi language cinema, already out of date because it comes from Bombay, which is now Mumbai, and Hollywood, it obscures many different language markets, many of which now have their own names like Jollywood, Bollywood, Sandalwood, and Coastalwood. Not making any of those up, we really like saying this is like Hollywood but for blank place, and like half those places are in India. India's largest and highest grossing film industry isn't actually the Hindi language market, it's Telugu cinema. The Telugu film industry is based in Hyderabad and started with one man, Raghupati Venkaiah Naidu, who established the first movie theaters in South India, based first in the city of Madras, which screened European, American, and Indian films. He also founded Star of the East Films, which he would use to direct and produce with his son R.S. Prakash, who also starred in the film, his magnum opus, the 1921 silent film Bhishma Pratigna, the first Telugu film ever produced. R.S. was sent to Europe before filming, where he studied filmmaking under Will Barker in London and then at Path in Paris, and he even got to watch F.W. Murnau work in Germany, and then he went to Hollywood. Their Star of the East studio would also be known as the Glass Studio because of their innovative greenhouse lighting techniques. R.S. became a prolific filmmaker, shooting, developing, and editing all of his own early films. From the beginning, and that silent film Bhishma, the Telugu cinema has been known as the center of Hindu mythological filmmaking. In 1932, H.M. Reddy used the Imperial Studios in Bombay to create the first Telugu talkie, Bhakta Prahlada. It was produced by Ardeshir Irani, who had produced the first Hindi language talkie in 1931 and wanted to move into the South Indian market, just to show you how competitive these different language markets were even back then. Starting in the late 1930s, Telugu cinema also began to be used as a way to do social problem filmmaking. Many of their films tackled perceived problems in Indian society. Indian filmmaking was dealt a heavy blow during World War II when the British Raj limited the amount of film strip that was allowed to be used as a scarce resource. The war years, as a time of consolidation, led to a more Hollywood style of actors and actresses under contract to studios, and themes of these films changed from social problem films to folklore and mythology-based films. This would accelerate as the 1950s and 1960s became the golden age of Telugu cinema, with the capital of this filmmaking moving from Madras to Hyderabad, and the establishment of Vijaya Productions, which would become the largest film studio in Asia. Hoping to get more filmmakers to move their operations to Hyderabad, the Andhra Pradesh government allotted 22 acres in Banjara Hills for Annapurna Studios in 1976. And in the early 1990s, Telugu cinema had exploded so much that the largest film production facility in the world, Ramoji Film City, was opened. A complex so big that it's been called a city within a city. This huge infrastructure and popularity made it a perfect medium for the pan-Indian film movement. Starting in the 2000s, S.S. Rajamouli brought big-budget, CGI-laden blockbuster filmmaking to Hyderabad, with the explicit goal of bringing South Indian Telugu filmmaking to India's northern audiences. And tonight we're talking about his 2022 magnum opus, RRR. S.S. Rajamouli has been called India's biggest director ever. All 12 of his feature films have been financially successful at the box office. 3 of them have been in the top 10 highest-grossing Indian films ever: Rajamouli's incredibly successful Bahubali franchise and RRR. RRR stars the megastars Ram Charan and NTR, who has been called the man of masses. RRR is an incredibly epic film, part action film, part nationalistic historical drama, which sees 2 of India's revolutionary leaders, NTR as Bheem, a Gond tribal leader from Telangana who fought for the liberation of Hyderabad in the 1930s, and Ram Charan as Alluri Raju, who fought against the British Raj and was called the hero of the jungle. Both leaders took part in rebellions in South India, Raju in Madras and Bheem in Hyderabad, but not at the same time, and there's no evidence that they ever crossed paths. RRR imagines that they became unlikely friends, but also turned against each other by their relationship to the Raj, and imagines what could have been.
any blood. Hit him harder.
It also stars Ray Stevenson, R.I.P., and Alison Doody as the almost comically evil and sadistic governor and his wife. They kidnap Bheem's sister from his tribal village, which leaves Bheem as his village's protector to storm into Delhi to rescue her, putting him at odds with the Raj as well as Raju, who at this point is an Indian imperial police officer. Along with the comically evil governor and his wife, is living their niece Jenny, played by Olivia Morris. This was originally going to be Daisy Edgar Jones before she had to bow out to work on normal people. The film tackles colonialism, India's resilience after the overthrow of the Raj, and makes a powerful plea for Indian unity. Of course, the era of Modi and the BJP's dominance, nationalistic filmmaking and calls for unity are always going to be side-eyed. But RRR is an incredibly enthralling 3-hour epic with action-packed sequences where you can see British colonizers get their ass beaten. Multiple people get tigers and wolves thrown at them. CGI is pretty great, and they're not afraid to really lean into that part of the filmmaking, combining historical drama, myth-making, and an epic bromance for the ages, as well as some pretty great musical numbers, dancing, and an Oscar-winning song. More than anything, it's a fun movie and what blockbuster filmmaking should be. Before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Then hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Super chats are now open. If you have any pressing questions, send us a super chat, which helps me maintain the expenses for the show, which I am obligated by the rules of the Geneva Convention to stop everything and ask the panel. Another way to help us out is to become a patron and give us money every month. In exchange, you get access to all of our after parties, bonus content, and we'll tell you even more movies we watched recently. Patreon.com/Movie Night Extra. We have a Movie Night Extravaganza Discord. There's an invite link in the episode description, and we have a Letterboxd HQ account. So those are 2 more places to follow along with us. Okay, let me introduce the illustrious panel. Conan Neutron is the host of Protonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and the frontman for the band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. You can check out his music and hopefully buy some at neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Kristina Oakes is a co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza and a Twitch streamer. You can find her streaming at twitch.tv/cosmopolitics. All of her social media accounts are also at Cosmopolitics. She's on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and even occasionally on Letterboxd. Kt Baldassaro is the co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, a director, writer, and actress who wrote and co-directed Girl in the Basement, along with appearing in horror movies like The Purge Election Year and The Devil's Nightmare. You can catch her voice acting in the podcast series, The Starwell Foundation, and she is the host of What If I Don't Like It, and on TikTok at Movie Runtime. Alexis Gentry is the editor and movie critic for Trashwire, the co-chair of the Denver Film Critics Society, and the host of What You Watchin'. I, of course, am your host and someone who would never rat you out to the Imperial Indian Police, Forrest Miller. Dun, 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 dun.
Well done.
I would never do it.
From Brazil.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. Alexis, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to chat with you guys because I love this movie and I think it'll be fun.
That's actually how I knew that you are our kind of people. Because when KT told me about you, of course, first thing I do is I peeped game on the letterbox. I was like, all right, what kind of stuff is she into? And I saw RRR, high score, say less.
For sure.
Because I was advocating, these two will tell you, I would not shut up about this movie for like an extended period of time.
Nice.
It was a heartbreaking, I guess it was a success and failure of democracy that we ended up not doing it when we covered like the Oscar movies for that year. But
it's got like
we'll get to it. Yeah, because apparently the Academy forgot about it as well. Except for
it's like, let's give it the cool song. You know, it'll be a fun Oscar performance, and it was fun. It really was.
It was
very like, oh, here's this little fun thing.
Yeah, one of like 12 things that movie does great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, and I've seen a lot of people, like, I was watching interviews from the time, like, people were talking about how it definitely would have won the international award if Modi had actually, like, you know, the the Indian Film Commission that actually decided to put that in as their selection, but because it's not a Hindi film, it's a Telugu film.
Totally.
We'd rather lose.
Yeah.
It's more important to us. Okay.
And then the film that they nominated, I can't even remember what it was. The film they nominated didn't even get
nobody
nominated for anything. Like, it wasn't in the 5 films that they had. So it's like, you guys didn't just fuck up that way. Like, you fucked up by like, not even getting the film in nomination. Like,
I think that's a really interesting aspect of the Oscars that I think a lot of people don't really know about. That happened again, I think, with Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall. There was like a blackout situation.
For your corruption, anyone? Again, we were every year around award season. We watch Bailey Series Dark History about how award seasons. I mean, the Emmys has like 25,000 people, which makes no sense to me. But you can say, this is a lot of film. It's not boring. It does a lot of different things at once. Can you say this is the superior Emilia Perez?
Yeah, I think I just said that on Letterboxd about an hour and a half ago. Yes, because Emilia Perez also tries for many things, and with far less of a hit ratio for our opinion.
Yeah.
But this one lands at all. It's crazy. If you sit there and just outline like all, it's like you could make a great movie out of any one of the things. Like even like I had forgotten certain elements of like, oh yeah, it's the fish out of water, like language barrier, romantic comedy aspect. That all works.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I was like, I barely remember that storyline. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that.
Like imperialism and stuff like that. Like what? Like,
it's delightful. It gives you like the most movie for one movie, and it's like so delightful in that sense where you're like, wow, it's every movie in one movie.
But
every movie everywhere all at once.
You only see one movie.
Yeah.
But it's crazy going back to going back through Rajamouli's like a couple of his I was like watching the last couple movies he did, and like Bahubali, like that whole film series gives you like Lord of the Rings plus.
Forrest cut out.
It's Modi. He shut him down.
I do think what he's trying to say is that you see this genre bending across his other films, and I was going to ask, like, this is more typical of Indian foreign films to be more genre crossy than, so is this something that's an American audience going, wow, look at all these different films, and would that have come across to say?
I think there's kind of a sense of like, like every movie should deliver you everything, at least for like the really, really big movies. So I think you get like aspects of, you'll get like comedy in there. There's always a romance in there. Of course, music is always so huge. So I think there is kind of a sense of like, a movie should serve all these purposes at once versus I think, we kind of like, and I mean, that's not to say there's not like, there are certainly movies that are just strictly dramas. There's a lot of movies that don't have musical sequences in them or whatever. But I think like the really, really big ones, like sort of the blockbusters tend to be those movies that can deliver all the things.
But not always very successfully. Sometimes it's okay, you're shoehorning this in to like say that you did it, right? And that's what distinguishes this big time. Also, way to go for extensive use of CGI, but like, who cares? Like,
I think like it's such a perfect example of like photorealism is not like the primary goal.
Right.
And I think like that's to me feels like a very Rajamouli thing. Like he's always very like concerned with, does it conjure up the emotion that he wants? Yeah. So the realistic aspects of it or continuity or different things, like it's not a concern for him as much as just like, did you feel what I wanted you to feel in the scene? And I think it's like, yes, all the time,
Well, absolutely. And that's something where, again, I think I said when I first saw it too, is just like, I feel like, especially franchise movie making should take some notes from this. But I think like anytime you see something that goes for a big swing, I love a big swing. Even sometimes, even if I don't like love the movie, I'm like, you know what? I did not expect that. Like that is crazy. And sometimes that can be good, sometimes that can be bad. But I think when you see a familiar framework and then you see someone go just hog on this with all the best things and I didn't, before I saw this movie, full disclosure, like most people that live in this country, I had no idea, like Tollywood versus Bollywood. I was like, what? I don't know. Okay.
Hollywood?
And then I realized, I had seen a couple like quote unquote Tollywood films. I didn't understand the distinction. Like, why would I understand that distinction? Why there's no discourse about it at all.
Yeah.
So to see it done so well, And at a time period, because remember, this is also the Everything Everywhere All at Once year, which for me it was this RRR. It was RRR, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I think Banshees of Inisherin was my third. I can't remember, but it was like, yeah, which one of these things is not like the other, by the way. But I just anytime you see like bold moves like that, where you're taking in stuff and just doing it really well, and then to come out at a time where I felt like most of the stuff that was meant to be big marquee, here's all the action stuff, kind of sucked. It didn't deliver.
Yeah.
And this like over delivers.
That's such a huge part of it. We were kind of witnessing like the start of the kind of decline of the Marvel movie, where the quality of that started to fall off. You started to be able to see the kind of like corporate structure behind all that. Where I think like what made Marvel so huge was like the emphasis on the story. And then after, Infinity War and Endgame, we started to see like, oh no, the goal here is to like continue the money train, and I think then RRR came in and just became this thing where it was like, oh man, like remember feeling joy watching a movie, like and like I'm not surprised that sort of Western audiences just embraced it so much, because I know I felt that way too. It was like, a drink of water in a desert where you're suddenly just like, oh wait, like you can make something that has emotion and that I feel invested in, and that doesn't feel like cynical, that feels very sincere and very like genuine in its intentions. I mean, obviously the goal of any movie is to make money, but it didn't seem like it was only the goal to make money,
Yeah. And
it also has great historical context around it, like we were talking in the intro. I mean, even in just that scene where they're jumping off the bridge pendulum across from each other to get that kid in the water, and like it is a symbol for how one of them is obsessed with getting the child to safety, and one of them is more obsessed with like holding the flag and nationality, and the two symbols of them as figures. And
it's a literal bridge.
Yes, right. But it's also bad. It's as badass as if Michael Bay had designed it himself and was like no notes. So it's amazing.
Like they swing under the bridge and exchange kid and flag. Amazing.
It's so amazing how it's able to hit both of those notes. I know that on Trashwire you talk a lot about like pop critique and stuff like that. Do you feel that there's two levels of this film, and that maybe Western audiences only got the enjoyment from that's cool, or do you feel like they sat down and were like, tell me more?
I think there's definitely like a little bit of that. I think it just appeals to like, obviously there are so many layers for like Indian audiences for this, but I think for us, it was kind of that thing of like the understanding of like the language of film and what you can do with that. We see like with genre, with different things, like this movie kind of plays with so many of those things in a way where it's like, okay, we've all seen an action sequence, but have we seen an action sequence like this? We've all seen a musical.
Have you used the motorcycle as a weapon? Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, it's all these things, and you feel like crazy when you're telling people about this movie, because you're like, okay, and then one time, like, so he jumps out, and then there's like all these animals that go flying out of the truck, and then they just like start attacking the British people, and like you feel like you're crazy when you're telling people about this, like you're like a kindergartner describing something that's like they really love, but at the same time it's like that's kind of part of the appeal too, is that it taps into that sort of base sense of like, I love seeing fun, exciting things, and this delivers that in a way that doesn't feel as like corporate structure-y as what we typically get here, I
had people say that I undersold it, because I was being aware of the fact that, and they're like, that movie was way crazier than you said it was. Like, well, I mean, I didn't want to sound like an actual insane person describing everything.
For real. Like when you try to tell somebody like, piggyback prison escape best friends moment, like that sounds like something that people would be like, wait, and this movie's good? And you're like, no, it's like really good. Like you're so invested in the piggyback prison escape,
he's shooting guns, and his friend reloads the guns for him, like while they're like shooting. It's like what?
For sure.
And the tone of this movie does not seem completely inconsistent with all that it's trying to do. Like, I remember when I saw the Jersey Boys musical adaptation, it was very dull, very like bland, but then they ended with a Bollywood ending, and I'm like, what? I'm like that. I'm like, wait. I'm like, this completely changes the tone at the last minute.
Was that the Eastwood movie? Is it that you're talking about? Okay, I still haven't watched it.
It is an infectious and celebratory way to end, though. Like, if you want people to remember something, like, this is better than what we gave you.
Yeah. That's what I like about this movie. The tone just doesn't seem inconsistent with everything that it's trying to do. You know, it's like every movie, everywhere, all at once. You know, like so many different genres, but it works.
Yeah, it's really like. Oh, go ahead, Katie.
I was gonna say I wouldn't call it a big M musical. Like it sings sometimes, but it's not like Amelia Perez, which is like an opera.
Yeah, I think in a way, because music is such like an integral part of like Indian cinema, and I know like with Telugu cinema, like my most listened to music on Apple Music for the past like several years has just all been just like nonstop Telugu stuff. And I think it's like because it's so integrated into cinema there, like just like naturally, you don't have these weird like halt the momentum, here's a song kind of moments like I think we sometimes have in musicals here. I feel like if you look at like golden age musicals, it was like, and then it goes right into a song and then it goes right into the next plot point. But I feel like somewhere along the line there was like a disconnect. Whereas I feel like with these movies, it's like the song just is there, it advances the plot or it advances the emotional impact, and it doesn't like, you don't feel like, oh, okay, you could take these out or this could happen in a different way.
It doesn't grind everything to a halt.
You don't need a Busby Berkeley dance number that lasts for like 15 minutes.
Right. Although in this case, like they maybe are restating the case for many lesser dance numbers because kicks ass, but again, one tiny part of what this movie does, and it is really propelled because the leads are so good. Like they have such natural, easy chemistry with each other. And that's okay. If you're doing like buddy anything movie, perhaps they should seem to be buddies. I don't know, wild idea.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's such a thing. Like I think the like film families are really big there. So you'll have like a dynasty. And like I think, we have all this nepotism debate here. And I feel like there it's much more like, well, yeah, of course, like because your grandfather was a film star, and so your father was a film star, so you're a film star, and I think it makes it where like a lot of these actors all like know each other, have grown up together, that kind of thing. And so when they have chemistry, you're like, well, yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys have known each other since they were like kids. So they do have really good chemistry and they do have really good friendships and stuff like that within there too. So.
Both guys have a different kind of charisma too, which I think is so cool and kind of almost a lost art. Like I feel like everybody, and that's, I kind of, sometimes we'll go off in these longer-ish rants about how supporting actors and leading men, leading ladies have now become the same thing. And so you miss some of that, where you get to some like different kinds of interactions that like it's fun, it's nice, and it's weirdly as new sounding, new seeming as it is in Western audiences, it does feel almost a throwback in that way.
Totally, it's very like old star system kind of thing, where it's like these are like movie stars, and I mean like superstar movie stars. I mean that's the kind of thing where you have with a lot of the Telugu actors where they'll have like nicknames, so like Junior NTR was like the young tiger. Or like Ram Charan was mega power star because his father was mega star, his uncle was power star, so he was mega power star, and now he's been rebranded as global star. Yeah, it's like, so there's all this stuff. There's one that I've been watching constantly is Ravi Teja, and his nickname is the Mass Maharaja because he is like the king of the sort of blockbuster movie. Prabhas, who I love, he's Rebel Star because his uncle was Rebel Star and he was young Rebel Star, and now it's like, so there's all these things where it's like there's like such branding for like the stars themselves. They're so huge that like I think that's another reason why this movie was so amazing, was to have two of them in one. It's like, very like beta fish, where it's like they can't be in the same tank with each other, but for this movie, to have where like two of them are in one and you're banking on like double star power. But then there's also like some challenges in here too with getting them to play kind of not just necessarily the traditional hero role that you would see in a lot of movies as well. So it's really like, it's such an achievement in so many ways, this movie, just even down to like having them both in the cast,
Yeah. It reminds me like, with the nepotism thing, like it goes like a lot of people think the nepotism like angle is something that's like new in Hollywood, but it's been going back to like the days of like old Hollywood, like Lon Chaney, Junior. He changed his name to Lon Chaney Jr. because he's like, my father was known for doing horror movies. I'm doing horror movies like him. It'll give me an extra boost. Like in those instances, like I'm like and they have the talent. Like a lot of people, like you mentioned, Alexis, that a lot of these, Hollywood stars, they grew up on sets, their families knew each other. They learned the craft on the spot. It was like on the spot, on the job training for them.
Yeah, it's like, of course, there's nepotism when you literally are like, I was raised knowing all this stuff about this industry. Like, yep,
Don't have to train me. I was also reading online that it was a little, I was kind of obsessed with the choreographer for the Natu Natu piece. And he was saying some of the hardest part was that both of these guys are so different in their acting styles and even in their dancing styles that the synchronization took way longer than you'd think. It was like 5 months of getting this together, then like 15 to 20 days of shooting it to just make them look as synchronized because they are so different in all of their styles.
Did you guys?
They're even different, like body type, even though they're both very, muscular guys. Don't get me wrong, but like they're very like and that's kind of what makes it cool too.
Totally,
right?
Yeah.
They're the kind of guys who can have charisma with like absolutely a bucket of ice water. Like
for real,
they work fantastic on screen together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you guys talk about how it took so long to choreograph that scene? They ended up having to move from India to Kiev in Ukraine.
That's crazy.
And so that entire sequence with the choreographer working with them is in front of the presidential palace, which is now that there's it was before obviously the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but now that's the place that all the world leaders always go and do the photo shoots with Zelensky outside. So I was like, where have I seen that?
Very surreal to see that, and be like, wait, not do. Like, here.
I spent 2 weeks training there at a fencing camp, and so like when that scene first played, I was like. Wait. So I smell burnt toast.
It's it's because of monsoon season. So there's a certain time period in South India where you can't shoot anything because there's too much of a chance that the flooding is going to get you.
Yeah, your sets will wash away as well your actors.
there's this really interesting, and I won't play it because my internet's already fucked up enough without playing a video, but I'll try to summarize it. There's this video of Rajamouli where he's talking about he's breaking down the scene in Vanity Fair or whatever, and he's saying he kept asking hey, can we play music really loud at the presidential palace? And the Ukrainian guy that is handler person is like, sure. And they're like, can we have all the drum sets? Can we set up all the instruments in the middle of the square of the presidential palace? He's like, yeah, I don't see why not. He's like, can I bring big speakers with me? And he's like, yeah, sure. Like,
try doing that at Buckingham Palace or what? Like, you can't do that.
Yeah, totally.
Well, try doing it now. I mean, I don't think you can shoot there now that there's a missile.
Probably as a shooting location, not ideal at this moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, I love that something you brought up for us too, that the all of the British people here just absolutely wonderful, cartoonishly evil representations of British people. I finally remembered where I saw the woman from, which is Elsa from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. She was the Nazi that both of them got with and made for awkward, funny exchange.
No way.
Yeah.
Yep. Isn't that crazy? So it's one of those things where it's like, who better to play like that type of white woman?
Yeah, it's like,
right?
Great.
We got one.
So good, like it's not even bleeding. I believed it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're like, we got one white woman and I know exactly who could play her.
Right. Exactly. She understands the assignment.
She started her career as one of the villainous Bond women in the last Roger Moore.
It's a very mid movie. I've seen it. I don't remember anything about it, but and also Ray Livingston too. I mean, great R.I.P. Great character actor.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I think that's the thing too. Rajamouli really his villains in his movies. There was something, I think it was maybe his father, who is writes a lot of the sort of story elements, was talking about you need a really good villain if you're going to have a good hero. And I feel like he is such a good villain here, where it's he's so perfect and he's so evil in all the best ways. Right. it's great, you know. To me, that's like such a key part of this is like if your villain is not particularly convincing, your heroes seem less heroic, and Rajamouli heroes are the most epic heroes, so you need the most epic villains to go with them for sure.
Well, even in Bahubali, right? Like the you know, the uncle, like they chose, right? Like the brother or the cousin, I guess it's his cousin.
It's like
take him out. He has
Rana Daggubati, who is the villain in Bahubali, is first of all the most attractive man ever to walk the earth, like straight up. But also, like that's such a perfect example of where like you need this really epic villain, and he just like is like full like leaning into it, total evil, so great in a way where it's like, and it's such a perfect contrast. And when you're like, oh, now you like want the hero to defeat him even more. So wonderful.
He's got those eyebrows that literally go.
Oh, that's my favorite.
So that when he throws his brow, it literally looks like a villain, like
for sure.
Like the villain eye. Yeah, like
as a person who is like very into nice eyebrows, I literally like the first time I watched that, they showed him and I was like, listen, I know he's the villain. I know we're supposed to be rooting against him, but this is the most gorgeous man I have ever seen.
But I would die for him. So we have a problem
seriously.
now.
Maybe he has a point. You know. Just saying.
We got a comment that says, asked my buddy who's from Mumbai if you liked it. He said, we are very proud of that film. When was the last time anyone felt proud of a film from our respective nations? For Matt, it was Lord of the Rings in 2002.
Because he lives in New Zealand. Yeah. Good question. I don't know.
Great question.
Yeah.
By the way, I said Ray Livingston. I meant Ray Stevenson. Sorry, just self-correct myself.
The Australian politician.
Yeah,
Ray Livingston would be a way more British villain name.
Exactly. It just wasn't British enough, really.
I did want to say that my husband's name is Scott. And so his experience watching this film with me was a little like, aha, I feel like I'm in trouble.
I love the costuming in this goes extra hard as well, too.
For sure.
And certain like small things, like, you know, when he gets the red uniform and it's just like, and it's like Technicolor style, like the colors are popping so hard. And like, it's something that, God, so many movies now are just drab, you know, earth tony, sometimes piss tony, and like
You're in yellow.
If you see something that really makes excellent utilization of color, man, it just hits so hard.
Yeah,
And
it's something like I recently reviewed Ram Charan's brand new movie called Game Changer that just came out. And I was laughing because I kept hearing people talking about like, oh, Wicked, it's so like beautiful. It's this beautiful, vibrant musical. And I like watched that and I'm like, every single musical sequence is just like the most colorful thing you've ever seen in your life. And I was just like, I feel like people really need to watch more Indian musicals if you want to see like beautiful, vibrant musical sequences, you know?
Because we're not used to seeing that because for whatever reason we just settled into, I mean, I guess we can blame David Fincher. I don't know who to blame, but like.
I actually watched a video that explains why a lot of movies look like that. And a lot of it comes down to what projectors being used, what the screen is. And because I watched Wicked and I was like, wow, the scenes actually look kind of colorful. Like it was bland when I saw it.
It's like compared to what we usually get, it's like, colors. But then when you look at like the original Wizard of Oz versus Wicked, you're like, oh man, Technicolor.
Yeah.
I just watched the limited series American Primeval, which is from the same guy who did The Revenant. And it's like, the earth doesn't even know the color brown. They've taken that from us. It is blue and gray.
It was like, I remember when Phantom of the Opera came out, and I'm like, I thought the song Masquerade was all about colorful, you know, costumes. Why is everything, you know, black and white costumes and you're in yellow?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, a good recent example, of course, is Barbie. You know, Gerwig did a great job. She's very influenced by Tati and like Playtime and stuff along those lines. And Brels of Sherbrooke, like all the French stuff where it's just like you know, candy colors, and that makes sense, right? Substance, that's a great use of color.
Yeah.
I do wonder when it comes to like stuff with CGI, like big blockbusters. I also feel like they purposely kind of tone down colors, even in this a little bit. Like when they have the whole sequence where they're shooting it in front of the, you know, the palace, and they have they throw the tigers at everyone and the wolves and stuff.
Amazing,
they have to tone it down, the color of everything. Besides the fire, I mean, the fire is obviously
Forrest,
really bright, and then
you're right.
You're
right.
The sky really pops, and that's how they
because for CGI, for everything else, it's like 4K, but for CGI, specifically CGI images, they tone it down to like 2K or whatever, and that's why a lot of things look very bland. And when I was learning about this, I was like, that makes sense, but why can't they? It's a whole filming process that I was, learning about on my stream the other day, and I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense for why some stuff just looks so
it's drab. Yeah, and since we're talking about that scene, which goes very hard in a movie where almost every scene goes like super hard. But something that I love, and it actually it's a kind of a basic thing, but I mentioned in our group chat, like that's actually what I was like, all right, I'll check this out. This looks awesome. But like the usage of slow motion and the framing, and people forget a lot, like with CGI, like you can frame things up just because you're making images. Like you can use filmmaking techniques that have existed, for a century before, and you can still make it exciting. And like the uses of slow-mo there, where you're just where it's just like what. And again, sure. I hate the Netflix style previews, but when you saw that as a preview, I'm like, all right, I don't know what this is.
I'm watching that shit.
Yeah, this looks badass.
No, I love cats.
Well, I love the scene where he's supposed to be fighting. He's supposed to be fighting the wolf, right? And so they let the wolf out, and a tiger just happens to pick up on the fact that and
they collide, and you're just like, what is this movie?
And that's how they introduced.
That's like the introduction to Bheem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're like, what is this dude all about? Sorry.
Even the film starts with this like weird warning that you've never seen in any film before. That's like, don't worry. All the animals.
It's all CG. Yeah, don't worry.
I'm even going to list animals in case you like the horses.
Yeah.
So you can do all of them. Like, wait a minute, this film's going to have what?
What kind of movie is this? Like, what? Like, how do you need all those animals?
Is this Zootopia live action movie? Like,
we bought
of 37 different CG animals.
Should I get my bingo card out? What are we doing here?
Which does make you feel better about the violence of them because they're not real, and you cognitively can't tell that. So the fact that they're not as like realistic is helpful because nobody really wants to see that.
Totally.
Yeah. As much as I love a tiger getting punched in the face, I don't want to see a real tiger get punched in the face.
Totally. Yeah. In a way, it's like it's kind of like it's almost like the message is saying like, hey, just so you know, like this is a movie and it's fake. Like
have fun.
It's okay to just enjoy it and have fun.
If I want to see animals get abused on stage, I'm waiting for the Siegfried and Roy biopic to happen.
Well, I mean, and India has.
That may be the greatest tag you've ever done in this show, Kristina. That's amazing. Bookmarking that.
But India has like a bit of a different relationship to animals than I feel like we do in a sense, right? Like, I mean, it's not as, at least, stuff like cows being sacred. Like there's more of a respect, I think, for at least certain kinds of it. Maybe not like the banded crate that he throws at him, but like there's more respect for certain kinds, especially because, I mean, we're like in America, we've tamed pretty much everything to the point where like, I mean, you're not going to get attacked by like a mountain lion, but in India, you could very well get attacked by a tiger. Like, so there is, I think also there's levels of respect for nature in that sense. And I love when he has to kill the tiger and then he like sits in front of it and kneels and he says like, brother, I will use you use you for my purposes and I'm sorry. And he like has the tiger's head against his head, and you can tell even in that scene like there's a very different relationship between the symbology of animals, I think, and how we think of like
for sure.
we're gonna cut down the woods and everything's
I don't know. I can't think of a Hollywood film where there was like we have not harmed any animals before the movie even started.
Before it starts, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The only time it happens is when they're afraid that like PETA might pick it outside.
Yeah.
Just remember, John Wick. We're on like the 6th movie, all because someone killed his dog.
Yeah.
So
it could have been a 2-minute movie. Anyway.
Kind of before in the pre-air stuff. About the different languages that this film can be watched in. Mm-hmm. I know that we all found out if you are listening to us and you're going to watch this on Netflix, your really only option is going to be the English sub or the Hindi version. And I was curious, Alexis, can you talk to us about why this is happening? And do you have any strong feelings about how an audience member should watch this film with it and if it really matters?
Sure. I think like originally it's in Telugu. We don't have it in Telugu here. because I think Netflix has exclusive streaming rights here and they have it in Hindi. And then a lot of like South Indian movies, like a lot of the time with Netflix, we'll get a Hindi dub of those movies. But I have noticed now Netflix is getting a little bit better with having things in multiple languages. I think it has to do with like, I think it's a rights issue really, like where you can sell the rights for different languages in different ways. And I like sometimes we'll find where there'll be a movie that is in Hindi on Netflix, it's in Telugu on Prime. It's so that it kind of just goes all over the place. But yeah, this one
there's a streaming site Z5, I guess, which is just an Indian site, and I guess they have
our
the
new
Telugu.
sponsor.
they have the Telugu one on there, but I think it's like $20. You have to pay $20 up front or something. So it's like a very extremely expensive service.
Yeah, sometimes it can be really hard. I always just say like with these, sometimes it can be hard to find them with English subtitles, period. So if you can find a Hindi dub, but it has English subtitles, then just like whatever, if you can, you know, whatever you can actually like read or, you know, absorb, like just do that. So like I know like with Bahubali, that was on Netflix for a while and they had it in Hindi and Tamil and Malayalam, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna watch it in Tamil then, you know. So it's just kind of like, to me, like I've been binge watching. I'm over like I think I'm like over 100 movies deep in my like Telugu movie binge watch now. And I'm just to the point now where I'm like, whatever I can find it in with English subtitles, that's what I'm watching it in. So
like, watching on your recommendation, because I was like, all right, what else should I watch of Rajamouli before? Like I watched the Malayalam version on YouTube of Bahubali, and like that was. And even there, like the difference between, you know, they clearly speaking Telugu and then Malayalam as like different languages, like it still was almost hard because it's like I watched it in like HD and it was kind of hard because I was like, oh, I could see their mouths going. Like,
yeah, you can like you start to.
So you don't want that.
You can get used to it. You like know it's a dub. So even though you're like, well, it's okay. I mean, I can get used to it, and I'm just reading subtitles anyway. But it's like, but I know it's dubbed. You know. It's just like you know the psychological like aspect of that comes in.
Yeah, but ultimately you're watching the movie, so who cares? Enjoy the story, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
I like that for the Hindi version of RRR, it is the same. It's the cast, like because obviously you have to be able to speak Hindi and Telugu probably to, you know, be a star, like be a pan-Indian star anyway. Sure. So like it is cool that it's like you can see that it's their voices, you know what I mean? And it's not like
that's always huge. I always find that like really jarring from some of these actors that I love. Like when you watch a dub of something and it's so very clearly not their voice, like it can start to be like it's like that's not what he sounds like, you know. So it can be a little strange. But then it's also funny because there are certain actors where like the person that dubs them in another language just like becomes associated with that actor.
Right.
I know like Allu Arjun, I think has like there's like one or two guys who always will dub him in Hindi. And so there is like a person who is like, this is the voice of Allu Arjun in Hindi. And this is like, people just associate him with this guy. So like, it's really interesting where it's like, if you've only heard something dubbed, you're like, well, that's what he sounds like, you know? So it can be very weird too.
And it's really interesting, like certain filmmakers who do things in other languages, like Miyazaki, for example, right? Like now there's almost like a gold rush for whatever movies that people are dubbing of his, that they're like, oh, let me like, you know, big stars will like want
Robert
to be
Pattinson.
Like
but he does good voices.
Yeah,
I remember when Bill Skarsgård did the he played some like Swedish criminal, and since he can obviously he's Swedish, he can speak Swedish, so he did his own dubbing in this case. So
sure.
Some actors are able to do that. But then again, like you mentioned, there are actors who are known for, you know, for dubbing other actors or actors and actresses, and it's you know it's common. But I mean, I know that there's some like Dan Stevens, he can speak German, like he doesn't need someone dubbing over him for like if it's in German.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I was just watching the Herzog Nosferatu, and the way that they did the two dubs is they had Bruno Gans and Isabel Allende, and like, you know, everyone kind of spoke some English, so they had them do it in German and then in English, like back to back each scene.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like
That sounds like Herzog, all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No wonder that took forever to film.
Yeah, they did something sort of similar with Bahubali where they shot it in Telugu and Tamil like at the same time.
Yeah.
And then other ones are like dubbed after that and everything.
Those
But
seem
yeah,
to be
that
pretty similar languages, right?
a lot of I feel like a lot
Yeah.
of the South Indian actors can speak like more than one of the South Indian languages a lot of the time. And then a lot of, I mean, most of them can speak like 7 languages or something. So it's always like I'm American. I can't speak any other languages. You know?
No, 'cause I was watching Ram Charan and NTR, and they were doing like press for RRR, and they just had like these like flawless like English, like it was like even more than the interviewer almost. Like they were, I don't know. It's just like it's not anything I could do. Like it's not. I can't even. I could speak the world's most broken Spanish. Like
For real. And poor NTR gets grilled about that on social media, where people are like, "Why is he faking this accent? Why is he trying to sound American?" And I'm like, I think he's just trying to be able to be like understood. And Americans are pretty terrible at like understanding accents. So like, I think it's kind
we'll
of more
subtitle
that,
Scottish
you know?
people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like when this is so funny too. Ewan McGregor doing Lumiere and Beauty and the Beast. They told him to not do the French with the accent. They're like, go and he's like, but if you do
and it's like it doesn't make sense. It's like, yeah.
Like I'm like, you people don't understand that, some of these people need to sound a certain way so that people can understand them. Because we're not, a lot of them maybe have strong, thick accents. Maybe they're, growing up watching American film, a lot of foreign actors are able to do American accents a lot better than Americans do.
Yeah.
And we're so bad at understanding accents anyway in this country. I mean, even within the United States, there's accents where we're like, what the hell did she say? You know what I mean? So
can't understand a word.
Yeah.
I think that it's a pushback against colonialism, though, where they're just like, we don't want you to be good at speaking English because that is, kind of the.
I mean, I think there might be some of it. I think it's this kind of like, I think there's like accusations of it's like performative and it's very like catering to Hollywood, which I know happened so much when RRR came out. It was a very like, yeah, I'm happy for you that this movie is getting, Oscar recognition, but also like, we don't need that. And it's true. You don't like, I mean, Rajamouli is like the big dog of Indian cinema. So like he doesn't need this anyway, but it's still nice to have, It's like
well, it also it introduces your work to an entirely new audience too. And
exactly.
That's the thing that if you are India, you don't care about that. What you care about is like India getting glory, but only if it's the correct kind of message.
Yeah, there's and I feel like I think
By the
that's
correct
like
messenger.
social media too. Like I think social media is never happy with anything ever. So you could literally have like RRR winning an Academy Award, introducing all these people to Telugu cinema, introducing all these people to Rajamouli, and you're still gonna have people complaining about it because
why?
that's what social media is.
Where was the director nomination? Where was it in international? And I knew the answer.
And there's always
totally
the fear
There's the
that
difference
if we're catering towards that kind of thing, then audiences over there will have their movies made for American audiences instead of for them. So there's the fear of losing it.
Sure. Yeah,
and losing maybe what made it special, right? I mean, I think
I remember like right after that, it was crazy because like when Rajamouli was on sort of the press tour, everyone was kind of like, so do you want to make a Star Wars movie? Do you want to make a Marvel movie? Like, because that's like what always ends up happening. And he was very like, nah, I'm going to go ahead and just keep making movies. Like I have like 3 out of the top 5 highest grossing Telugu films of all time. So I'm gonna go ahead and just keep doing that,
The funniest part of the I watched like the Variety interview with Ram Charan and NTR, which is like the one where I saw like the flawless kind of English in there, and then they said you've been compared to the Rock and Vin Diesel of India, and so they were like, but like obviously American movies make it over there far more than Indian movies end up making it over here for like a wide audience. So they're like, okay, and they're like, would you ever want to come to Hollywood and make movies? And they're like, yeah. They're like, what would you guys want to? They're like, what would you guys want to make? They're like, I mean, if we're the Rock, we could make Fast and the Furious. Like,
shut up.
I would accept. I don't like
there for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not into like rebooting series, especially ones I think are mid at top dollar best. But Wow, that sounds great. I mean,
Yeah, no,
See, I feel like
Make it
my
13.
like ultimate dream,
Greenlit.
I would love to see Ram Charan as like James Bond. I'm like, to me, like I see that man in a suit and I'm like, James Bond.
I don't think Britain would recover
We'll get
from
too
that.
many
I
women
know, right?
pregnant.
I'm like, the
Yeah.
way that the Broccolis
would
would
be-
never do that, but
Yeah,
still.
that might be the final, because like they're already mad that like there might be, you know, like somebody like Idris Elba might be like Black
Yeah.
James
Oh,
Bond one day,
God.
and they're
Yeah,
real
for
mad
real.
about that. Indian James Bond, I think, might be the final nail in the coffin for like
Yeah, exactly.
Because the British.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I it's interesting that the British characters in this do all speak English, right? Like they didn't dub it into Hindi,
Right.
or they didn't dub, which of course you have to, because the whole thing is that they're coming into a different country and dominating it, and they're not going to learn the language. Like
Totally.
you know, they're like the British Empire, like they went out of their way not to learn. I was reading this book, Legacy of Violence, right before watching this, and it was talking about the British Empire, and like they went out of their way, every country, to not speak whatever language it was, because they're like, these people are under us, they need to learn English, we don't need to learn. So it's
The
interesting to
sun
have
never sets in the British
Yeah.
Empire, right?
Which is
Yeah.
seriously like one of the best shots of this entire movie.
Oh
is
my
the
God,
blood
so
splat.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
blood
it's so
splat.
good.
that was like the final moment of me being like, like
Yeah.
because he comes up and he's like the what do you call it, like the hero of the jungle, right? And he has the like he transforms totally Ram Charan from being like, you know, the kind of more, I guess, bougie like an imperialist version of that character to like
Just
the
say
hero
it,
of the jungle.
mustache. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, so he's Nosferatu. Oh no, but
Yeah.
he has like the long hair and he has the bow and everything. And then that moment is already like, holy shit, like he's totally transformed into like a full-blown action hero. And then that final shot of the blood splattering on the British Empire, you know, thing, and it's like,
For sure.
It goes,
fuck, like-
it's pretty badass. And to my understanding, that's closer to the depiction of the character, like of Legend, like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That look is like,
And that's the
closer to
thing
what
too.
it's
I think
supposed
for
to be.
us, it's like there's so the context was so different, I think, for us versus like for Indian audiences. Like for us, I think we were like, you know, okay,
Rambo.
we see this and we're like, dude, that's badass. That's so amazing. And I think
Yeah.
it's, I mean, I think the movie's really fascinating because it works on those different levels. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, to have something that can work like for people who are like, I don't know anything about this, but that to me is the filmmaking of Rajamouli, where it's like, that's using cinematic language to make it where it goes across all like sort of borders and
Right.
like, you know,
Yes.
regardless of all the context that you're getting, you're using film, like you're using the language of cinema to convey the emotion that you want, you know?
And what is, other than, you know, the CGI slop and the focus on franchising rather than storytelling, what's one of the biggest complaints about, you know, what Marvel has been up to is that, like, okay, they've turned something fun, which is, hey, put some fun in for the fans, to being like, oh, you need to watch 5 TV series,
Yeah.
7
It's homework
movies,
now.
like, and,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, let's tell a story. Like, it's one
Totally.
of the reasons
That's
why
not like Wanda.
the first, well, exactly, and the first 2 Ant-Man movies, they were great because it's like, you don't even care about any of that stuff. This guy isn't really involved in that. He's just kind of like
Yeah.
this other dude over here, and like, great, that's
Yeah,
Guardians
it's like
of the Galaxy. What
there
perfect
was
example.
there was a lot of joy in like something like Endgame, where you have the culmination of all this stuff and you have all the backstory and all the knowledge, and you're
Right.
watching this conclusion of this thing. But now I think like the Disney Plus era is when it started to be like, oh God, I have to watch like 7 hours of a TV show to be able to know what's going on.
Sounds
here.
exhausting.
Yes.
What is this, the Decalogue?
Kind of similar with Star Wars. Like Star Wars
you.
was very like, okay, I watch a movie like once a year, once every 2
Yeah.
years. I see a movie like, okay. And then it just got to be where it was like, there's just too much. Like you can't keep
Yeah.
up. And then it makes it where it does take the fun out of it, because it does feel like, oh no, to know who that character is, I got to do like research, you know? And it's like,
Right.
no, I just want to watch the film and feel what I'm supposed to feel, you know?
And then that's a good point, and I do want to get back to the movie, but I think it's important that if you think of like one of the most successful Star Wars stories that have been told, Mandalorian, which is basically Lone Wolf and Cub in space with blasters, and fantastic for it, and then
And Baby
additionally, and Baby Yoda, of course, but also Andor, which was fundamentally like tied in with Rogue One and tied in with that type of storytelling, but a different kind of Star Wars. It wasn't
Yeah.
It wasn't trying to do a fan service. It was trying to tell a story that and it worked, and people loved it. And then they learned the wrong lessons from it again.
Always.
And they made more
Yeah.
mid
The
stuff.
acolyte.
Yeah.
But,
And it's
I was-
consumed so quickly that if you don't watch it in time, so like not only like I have to watch all of it. If I don't watch it the second it comes out, someone's going to ruin it for me. So there's like a lot of anxiety in consuming it instead of enjoying
and again,
it.
it's like it feels like homework, and it's like rather than going to a movie to enjoy the movie, it starts to feel like a homework assignment. You know, it starts to feel like, oh God, all right. Well, if I want to ever enjoy this again, I got to do these 10 things. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Well, and that's so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to pivot back to the movie. One of the things that I
wait
appreciate
before
so much.
before I just had
Okay.
a point I wanted to tag
Sure.
on. When Alexis was saying that we don't really know the history of this, like American audiences, right? We might not have a frame of reference. I was thinking about how Oscar award winning fucking movie Gandhi, where it's literally Richard Attenborough, like the British director, and then Ben Kingsley in brownface,
Yeah, I know.
playing Gandhi. And it's like as a frame of reference for Indian history, for these independence movements, you know what I mean? Like in India, literally written by a British guy, directed by a British guy playing Gandhi. Like it's such a different frame of reference to somebody like SS Rajamouli, like telling their own story, telling India's story through his own lens.
sure.
Vital, and to have those historical things that mean so much to Indian audiences that are basically a pro, what's it? It's not nationalistic, but it's like basically celebrating the Indian people, right? And like
Indian
that.
unity.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, it's
so tying back to the earlier point is that like you don't need to know any of that to enjoy the movie, but if you do, then you get a value added, which is how you should do it. That's what
exactly. And I think like there's so much. I mean, I think we have that with some of our movies too, where there'll be something and you're like, oh, well, this is actually like a statement on, the war on terror or something, or this is actually about blah, 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 and it's like, and then if it's a big action movie, sometimes that will travel across the world and that context isn't necessarily everywhere. So I think like that's where to me, it's like, like movies don't exist in a vacuum and there are cultural implications for all of these things. But at the same time, you can look at a movie just on the grounds of like the filmmaking and appreciate it for stuff like that too,
Does it work as a well-made film? I mean, that's
exactly. Is this something that is like good in terms of like the execution of the narrative they're trying to tell,
Yes.
Yeah.
And for this, it definitely is. But then, I mean, like we're kind of in the age of like Wikipedia where obviously not everybody, but it's a certain percentage of people will always go back and like be like, oh, what, like the characters in this, like, well, like what is the movie trying to say? Like, go back and learn some of that history. And like, it's always interesting to me to, number one, to do that, but like to look at something like this, where it definitely has these layers where an American audience isn't necessarily going to get all the, the history.
But if it sparks like a cultural curiosity, that's great. I think that's such a huge part of it is like, when Parasite won Best Picture at the Oscars, suddenly everyone was like, hey, I want to check this out. I want to know more about this.
Cinema.
I want to, exactly. And I think like that's the whole thing is, so many movies that we get, it feels like it's just like it's made for us or for like a certain, the 4-quadrant kind of movie. And it doesn't necessarily like challenge a lot of things. So I always feel like with me, I'm like, I have been so obsessed with like, South Indian cinema or just movies from different places, because it's like, I kind of just want to know like what's being made out there, what's going on out there, like watch something with subtitles, you don't know. So to me, it's like, I like the idea that you can watch a movie like this that is so fun on just like a cinematic level, but then it can also make you, culturally curious about other things and want to find out like more about different film industries and stuff throughout the world.
This is such a good vehicle for that, because at the end of it you get that it's like a slideshow almost with like Nehru was on there and
they have like the full like montage where you're like you're like, if you don't know, you're like, okay, let me Google everyone in this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would you like to know more?
It was like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
You have to expect like those YouTube videos with like the arrows and the circles to be like 5 things you missed at the end of RRR.
Yeah, it's like Easter eggs, but as someone who has like a certain frame, like I recognize like like Nehru at the end of that, and I'm like, okay, I recognize him, and then there's like a next picture, and I'm like, okay, not him. And there's like the old one of the old emperors of India, and I'm like, I I had no idea who that
For real,
is.
you start to go through and you start to be like, I really like. You don't think about how much you don't know, like as an American, about all these other cultures until suddenly you're like, oh wow, like all this other stuff's going on, and we just like don't get it here, you know.
And that's one of the things for me that has been so great. I do the Criterion Challenge every year, and that's like led me to like people like Kurosami and so many like great like Japanese filmmakers and just like Brazilian filmmakers, like people from all over. And you're finding stuff that like I would never know to seek this out. If I just was basing my taste upon like whatever came in over the transom. And it's so interesting to like tie things together. Like, oh, I been a big Wim Wenders fan for like years. Like, oh yeah, him and Herzog came out of the same movement. And did you also know like there's this other guy who did this great movie called Fallen Leaves? Okay, well let's check that out. Oh, he's done a million other ones as well. I just didn't know anything about them. So if you're curious about that kind of thing, you can dig into it. And it's so nice to see when something breaks a little more into a mainstream audience that you get that window of opportunity that maybe people could dig a little deeper if they feel so inclined.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like the sort of the first kind of like real buzz about RRR that I heard was I'm in like this Facebook group for like, sort of comic book movie guys and pop culture people and all this stuff. And they were like, no, man, I saw this thing and it was awesome. And it was kind of like, oh, okay. So, you can get the kind of like people who just see Marvel movies or just see Star Wars movies to like this. And then maybe be like, should I be checking this out? Is there more that I should be looking at beyond like what I've been given from Disney? It's like, check out more things.
What do you guys think
3-hour movie with subtitles? Like,
That's
that's
where I'm like, it's so hard. Like, I have two of my friends. I basically like berated them into like, watching Bahubali because I was like, you guys, this is like my favorite thing. It's so amazing. And I was like, I know this is a big ask of you guys because it's 2 movies. There's a part 1 and a part 2. And I was like, essentially, I am asking you to watch like 6.5 hours of like a subtitled film, but I promise you're gonna like it. And they did, and I was very happy because I was like,
but then
I know this is a lot, like.
But if somebody is like it's presented as a streaming series, people won't bat an eyelash at it.
Yeah, true.
They'd be like, oh, 10 episodes,
game.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, the first one is 2 hours, I think 20 minutes. I know this because of my ADHD. It's so fucking bad, but like it draws you in the first half of Bahubali because it's 2 hours and like 20 minutes. It's like I could sit there, and then the second one is almost 3 hours. It's like 2 hours and 47 minutes, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not just gonna because I was gonna watch the first half and then be like, if I can get to the second half before we do this, like I'll watch. But then I was like, all right, like there's a cliffhanger, and I can't just not watch the second half of Bahubali. So I turned it on. Like,
too, I think what Indian movies do so well also is the intermission. Like, I feel like that's
bring it
such,
back.
Like, and again, the whole narrative is built around like, we know we're going to get to this point. We know we're going to like the sort of interval action scene is always such a huge part of these movies. And it's like, we're going to build to this thing. We're going to give you this kind of like mini cliffhanger within the film. Take a little break, have 15 minutes, get some food, go to the bathroom, do whatever. Don't worry, come back. We'll give you a little refresher and we'll launch into the rest of this movie. And it's like, I love that structure so much. And I wish The Brutalist was the last film that I saw that like had an intermission. I can't think of another like long ass, Hollywood movie that had an intermission.
Talk about it on this show a lot. I'm seeing The Brutalist on Friday and I'm so stoked to have an intermission. It's probably going to raise it at least half a star, no matter how I like it. But I think it's also, it's narratively it works too. Like Raj's character, you don't like, first of all, you get a real, like, not quite the same, but Infernal Affairs or The Departed, if you're a Scorsese guy, kind of thing where there's a turnaround to it, like things aren't what you seem, and then you get to see his backstory to it too, and that makes the ending, which is already badass, to be explicitly clear, like even more badass when you get that frame of reference, and then you get it's like not just because first you're like, wow, this guy. I guess if you just do like a really badass action scene where you like save a kid from exploding a bridge area, then you become bonded in blood immediately, which you probably would be. But it feels even more earned because it's that break apart and come back part of the story.
Yeah.
then getting all that backstory. I mean, Rajamouli does a lot of those like second intros. So there's like an intro to a character. You watch the first half of the movie, you get to the interval, and then when you come back, there's like a second intro that will reintroduce this character in a way where you maybe something you didn't know about them. And that I think is done so effectively here, where it's like you think kind of one thing of Ram, and then it's like, well, wait, like more after this, and we'll explain to you why we're here. And it's like it just makes you invest in the story immediately for that second half,
which is such a smart. I mean, when it comes to something like colonialism, where it's a system where if you're just kind of a guy, like you're not going to overthrow an entire system that's been around for like centuries. Number one, but number two, like you always see this in movies too, like where someone's waiting to do like some kind of terrorist attack or like insurgency or something like that. They're always like, all right, well, it's got to be the perfect moment. And there's that moment where he's like, all right, I just kind of sent this guy to die, and he's inspiring a lot of people. Am I just basically like a cop at this point? Like, is that like, have I fucked up so much, or have I given so much to this over 15 years that I'm now like, just kind of
in too deep,
in the wheel. Yeah. And then he decides like, no, I'm not going to be that. And then that's when the movie really gets like, oh, like he's going to come save his friend. Like,
right. You get the payoff for the bromance, like big time. Like,
it's like, imagine having character like evolution and all these things in a big blockbuster movie with action. Like, imagine having growth.
Yeah, and if you're allowed to structure your movie knowing you're going to be given an intermission, you can have your beats happen in that way. I did a lot of research onto intermissions and why they disappeared in the United States. The last one that was enforced was Gandhi. So that was in the 80s. There have been a few, like, so there's Grindhouse, the Tarantino, Rodriguez crossover that was shown with some intermissions when it was shown in 70 millimeter, but like in some places in Austin. But that last one was Gandhi. And the reason why is you get paid for the number of plays per movie. So you're incentivized to get more showings in when it's actually kind of shooting them in the foot, because you're right. If they had the intermission, people would go and buy more popcorn. Totally. And it's actually like the people who are sending out the movies are saying, get more plays in. Otherwise, we won't send you our movies. I don't give a fuck about your concessions or what people in the theater think. Play my movie more. Because then I'll get more ticket sales, and then my movie looks better in box office.
For sure. And the movies are so long now too. We've like when you look at like the length, I mean, like, you have like a 2.5 hour Marvel movie. There's no reason why there can't be an intermission, Right. It's like, to me, anything over 2.5 hours, you should have an intermission. And you should think about that when you're writing it so that you build it into the story.
We are pro intermission show for sure. I want to read this quote, and this is mostly for the audio listeners, but he said that an Indian's life is not worth a bullet. So how will this bullet earn its value? When it comes out of your gun and pierces an Englishman's heart.
Yeah.
Which
and it's set up.
Repeat that theme a couple times, right? And then it's to great,
it's like the best conclusion ever.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
he repeated it at key moments too. In the first time you see the Ray Stevenson is so fucking good as the evil governor. Like he has like the paunch, and I fear that the paunch probably might have been what killed him, because like I think he had heart problems after that, but he has that paunch, and he's such a presence in this entire thing. And one of the first things that he says to anyone, he steps out and he's like, this bullet cost like 6 shillings, and then it was made by an Englishman in an English factory, and then put in a boat that's an English boat, and taken over the 7 seas, and by the time it reaches India, it's worth £1, and £1 isn't worth an Indian's life. And
to bring that back, oh man.
Well,
so
then
awesome.
The halfway through where you get that basically intermission, then that's when when Raj's father, the first, like the thing that turns him against the Raj completely is the guy is about to be killed, and they're about to shoot the gun, and he gives that speech again, and then the guy picks up a hammer, and it goes black, and it's like, oh fuck. So this guy's kind of just walking around saying saying that in front of all the Indian police officers that work for him and shit in every province, and it's like, they're getting angrier and angrier, and it builds that so much so that when he does finally say the really badass when it pierces an Englishman's heart line, right? Like it's earned as fuck, like
totally.
And you also have that scene in the flashback with the bullet and his father, and it's like, oh, which like would be like the oh my god scene in like just if that's all the only scene, it was just like a bunch of people talking and that happened to be like, oh my god, did you see that movie? It was crazy. Like again,
and the father becomes obsessed with guns, like in a really crazy way. Where
the setups and payoffs of things I feel like are so incredibly effective in here, in that like it's not that they're like subtle, because it's not like it's subtle like foreshadowing or anything, but it's very like, you're going to care about this, then I'm going to remind you why you care about this, then I'm going to make you really care about this, Right. And I think that's even with the tiger, he gets the tiger and he's like, I'm sorry that I have to use you for my purposes. And then when the tiger comes out of the truck and you're like, oh, that was what this was all. Oh my God. Like
that was the purpose.
All the payoffs for these things, I think he just really understands those like satisfying payoffs. He does this Bahubali, and I know you guys haven't seen it, but there's a whole thing in Bahubali where there's this giant gold statue of the villain, and then that comes back in this very interesting way in the very sort of end of this. And I'm like, man, like it's so cool because it's like this sort of setup for this thing that happens in the first movie of this, and he knows where he's going with it, and he knows where like the imagery of that will then get paid off in this really like sort of epic moment in the second movie. I just think like those setups and payoffs are so satisfying, and that's part of why this movie is such a satisfying watch, is because you see these kind of things come in, these like thematic elements or whatever, and then when they are like fully realized, it's just like, oh yes, dude, like that entire thing at the end when Ram is like, return it to him, Bheem, and like hands him the like, oh man, it's epic, it's like amazing.
His found family brother, when his blood brother has been taken from him, right?
Totally.
Like, I mean, that's like, and people like to throw around, the bromance thing, and just anytime there's any depiction of male friendship, people are immediately shipping if they're attractive. That's the world we live in. But it is such a great payoff because you're like, oh, because this is the thing he spent like a lion's share of his life building up to.
It's the long game,
It's the longest game possible, and he's like, Bheem, you do it. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. It's so satisfying. Like that is such a satisfying conclusion.
And it really breaks your heart watching, in the because it's almost, I think, exactly halfway between when it ends the whole scene where they throw the tigers and then and then it goes black and then it goes to his his backstory. I think I was looking at it and I think it was pretty much exactly halfway through the movie, and there's the whole really sad thing where Bheem saves his life because he knows the three, which apparently is a real thing. They found out that there's like these certain herbs that like Indians in the tribal communities knew about, that like British people and like Western medicine didn't know about, that actually do prevent these bites from from actually killing you. But he does the whole thing where he repairs the thing and he saves his life, and then he tells him like, look, I it's not that I didn't trust you, and it's so heartbreaking because that he's like, he's a cop, and he's like, this is the guy he's been looking for. And
real Point Break energy,
little heat too,
You don't know his backstory, right? Like, so it becomes such a heartbreaking thing. Like, no, you're telling me he's that guy that is going to be, coming for your head. That all this stuff, and of course, like throwing the snake is one of the most badass moments in the entire movie, where he's like banded
of animals being constantly in the air and used as weapons. It's one of the best scenes. Yeah,
it's like that happens like 7 or 8 times, and man, it rules.
I feel like this movie did a really good job with what you're talking about with Bahubali, right? Where they give you the second story, and then they give you the first story at the end, and then they give you the first story and the second story. I feel like this movie kind of does a very obviously like a concentrated version of that because it's one film, but it does it gives you what and then the backstory, and then the present, like the present of what you're watching, and then the backstory, and then the end. And it's like it's that same kind of concentrated form of these two stories happening simultaneously.
Totally. It's like it shifts here's everything you think here's the characters you think here's who you think is good, who you think is bad. And then it's like, what if the perspective was different? And then you get all this other information. And then when you go into the second half, you're kind of like, oh man, now I have all this other context for this. And it just makes you invest so much. That's where I say like he's really, really good with like, not like manipulating our emotions in like a sort of cynical way, but in getting the audience close to where he wants them to be emotionally. And I think like I don't know like other directors that necessarily do such a good job of getting you like right where they need you to be emotionally in every scene. So you are invested exactly how they need you to be invested. You have enough information that like he knows you care about this character this way, but now he's going to show you this thing. You know what I mean? I just think that's like, it's so brilliantly done here for sure.
And I it's fascinating that like his dad is the storyteller that, you know, both for RRR and for Bahubali. His dad's the storyteller that kind of he comes up with the stories and then they write the scripts together, and it's like the dad has to be such a master storyteller.
Yeah, for sure. When you look at Bahubali, it's like it feels like straight up like it's like Game of Thrones level like complexity, and you know there's like scheming and there's this very like epic feel to it, and I'm like, man, that is like just to come up with like those characters and this sort of landscape and this kingdom and all these things. I'm like so blown away by that all the time.
Yeah, I watched a half an hour long interview with his dad, and I was like, oh man, this guy's a kind of a dangerous propagandist for like he has certain political causes that I'm like one of his next projects like, oh, I'm gonna make a movie about the RSS, and I was like in my head I'm like, don't do that, do not do that, do not do that.
Could be a problematic fave.
Yeah. Oh, for real. I feel like I'm to the point now where I'm just like, look, I'm just going to get over problematic faves at this point. Like if the whole world is terrible. If I enjoy a movie, I'm just going to enjoy the movie, you know?
But I also like, you know, as an American, I'm not exactly going to be like, you know, I think Indians should have these politics. And it's like,
well, exactly.
It's a real glass houses situation with what we got going on, you know, in about a week from now. So, you know.
We've lost the ability to complain about anything. Seriously.
Exactly. I'm like, I really cannot tell anybody anything at this point because
we're the Dollar General of the world, you know. It's like, okay, what we're going to do.
I did have one question before we move on to one-liners, which is, you know, I always ask this question when I'm watching any film. What did we feel about the female representation? This is mostly focused on the two male characters, which are awesome. Do you feel like the female characters lacked depth? Did you want more of their story? Did you feel like they were fine as is?
Well, in a movie with a lot going on, I was fine with, you know, not, you know, the focus on like the female characters. They did what they had to do.
Right. Cassandra was just, you know, that bitch, you know, extremely. And wasn't it supposed to be, I don't remember who said it. It was supposed to be Daisy Edgar Jones originally. In the,
right. I was asked about that, and then we were on all kinds of tangents, and I think my internet failed. But I was going to ask, like, do you guys think it would be different, or like it's crazy? It was going to be Daisy Edgar Jones, and then there was there's a break where they filmed it. They started filming in 2018, 2019. I think one of them got injured. Well, one of them got injured. Then COVID happened, so they had to stop for 18 months. Both Ram Charan and NTR both had to stay that jacked, by the way, for the entirety of
COVID. My God. Wow. So so basically the prison workouts were real is what you're saying.
They couldn't pull an Hassan and just like Hassan Piker and then just like eat like a bunch of junk food and gain like
they got to maintain those abs for the whole time.
So that was like the hardest. But I love when Jack's action stars though try to be relatable as fuck, and they're like, I love candy and I couldn't eat candy, and it's like, I feel for your brother. Like, I mean,
it's like you haven't seen a carb in 2 years, man.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Come on, cry me a river. No, but I think that so Olivia Morris is her name, who played Jenny. I think she's good. She's more
that's one of her few roles. I think this is like
she's like a stage.
Yeah, I think she was like out of drama school or something shortly before this. And then Alia, who is Sita in this, like I love her. She's phenomenal actress. Highly recommend. There's a movie called Gangubai Kathiawadi. It's on Netflix. She's incredible in that movie. So good. So highly recommend that one. Yeah, I think like I wish that there was more of her, you know, like I was kind of like, I really love her. I think she's like so fantastic. And she's like a huge Hindi star. So I think
like a ton of stuff, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. She was in a couple like Netflix things recently too.
She's in Heart of Stone with Gal Gadot.
Yeah, exactly. Where I was like, no, I want better for her. I love her. I want her to have better movies. Like,
Why did you
Actually, just a
hire
little
her?
bit of Jenny Slate. Just a little Jenny Slate about her.
Totally.
Money, please.
Yeah,
In the
but
best
like,
ways.
I think like she's so talented that I was like, oh man, I wish there was a little more for her to do here. And I think like with this, because it is like such like a dude focused story, like there's not a lot of room for that. That's one of the things I like the most about Bahubali is like there are like 3 major female characters in that are all like great, you know, like, so I think really just like super impressive and beyond, like way beyond like what I've seen in a lot of like sort of big Telugu action films. Like I would say he does a better job there, and that might also just be like the story itself kind of lends itself to that more as well. And it's, you know, 2 movies instead of 1. And
my answer to that question would have been, I think, different before and after watching Bahubali, because like watching Bahubali, like both parts of it being like, oh shit, like there's so much room for those for the female characters to have agency and even like villainous intentions or good intentions, or you know, there's so much there that it's like like I can understand this movie there wasn't as much
Coffee on Cops is a badass movie. Yeah, absolutely. That was hard as hell. Yeah.
But there's you know, there's just this movie feels like there's
this movie's like I mean, like this is an all-timer dudes rock movie, but I mean that as a compliment. Like I don't mean that as an insult. I'm like, look, what do you need a dudes rock movie to do? Cool, this does that times 20.
Well, and I think it's not like
it does it without being misogynistic. It does, but it's not trying to pretend like it's not trying to get.
I think that's the thing. It's like I think, you know, like there are female characters in this. Having someone like Alia is awesome, but I think this movie, it's like this is a movie that is at the core about like this friendship between these 2 dudes who are going to do badass stuff, you know,
who
and
never actually met each other. Which is why it's like so great. It's historical fiction. Yeah, but it's
I
like,
love that.
He said that he was actually very inspired by Inglourious Basterds, specifically when they kill Hitler. And it's like, well, that never happened. Obviously, it's great.
It's like, you can imagine whatever you want, you know. So like make a story that's however you want. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it does remind me a little of Lord of the Rings with that like 2 male characters that are so together, but it's still such a universal story that you're like, I don't care if it's 2 dudes.
Right. I mean, not only that. Bahubali hits Lord of the Rings, so like
I know that's real.
But I also feel like it goes with the whole theme of like pan-Indian unity, right? Where it's like, look, if we had really and this is good for like you know, an American audience. I think we can understand with like civil rights leaders, right? Like if people could have come together in a certain way, both, you know, like white Americans, like liberal Americans and civil rights leaders, and hadn't gotten torn apart, like could you imagine what could have happened sooner? And this movie the same way. It's like if these 2 characters had met, right? Like, and I think there's a decade between their two revolutions, but imagine if we had put these 2 powers together.
Yeah. I always think about like, you know, what would be the RRR if you did like, okay, what if it was like MLK and Malcolm X, but then they kick ass and somebody like throws a motorcycle or something.
But they know karate. Yeah.
It's like, I would be fascinated by something like that.
Yeah, great. I'm in. Yeah, let's go.
That's the first you know, version of that I thought of too, where it's like, it's MLK and Malcolm X.
What
like,
if you envisioned a world where those 2 were like the best bros, and then they just like had action sequences where they like took down horrible like racist governors together? You know?
Well, that's kind of what Professor X and Magneto sort of can be.
Totally.
But I digress, and we all know that anyway. So, but they wouldn't dare make that movie.
The X-Men version of RRR would be crazy.
For sure.
I'd be totally fine with that. So couple more things. It won for Not To. Great song, like great dance sequence, amazing. We talked about the disparity between those dudes just physically as dudes, let alone their physical presence, let alone their charisma and how they interact with everything. Works so elegantly, so great from a song composition standpoint. The fact that they like reverse, not the drums, but they like use a reversal in like the second third of it. Really interesting musically. Like it's one of the few times that like a best song is actually that's probably the best song that was nominated that year. Like it's actually like in the same way. Well, whatever. I got a lot to say about all that. Obviously, I'm a goddamn musician, but even though I'm going to stand by my assessment that it's like one of many things in this movie that like doesn't even come close to telling you the whole story, it is really It is
For sure.
really good. And it's interesting to see. I feel that for people that don't seek out world cinema, I'm trying to be real careful with my words here. I think that like that's the kind of thing that people will engage with, and then they'll assume, okay, yeah, it's a fun Bollywood movie, cool, right on. Let's talk about what Scorsese's up to. It's like, okay, but you're again, this is just like the tip of the spear, right? Like there's so much, much more under here. But I think in this rare case, and maybe it had something to do with COVID, that I think a lot of people like at least that door is still a little bit ajar. That there's still the ability for like another RRR style thing to get through, because people now have a bit more of a framework of understanding in that same way. Because I think the example of Parasite's a perfect example, right? Where, okay, that suddenly people are like looking, the Housemaid and stuff like that, digging up like crazy like old school Korean cinema because it's like people are interested in seeing these movies, and I think that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you can feel the effect of this just in the way that we're getting other Telugu movies here now. I mean, like I had to really seek out being able to see RRR when it was then sort of like, it was during like kind of a re-release here. And then a couple things came out since then that were, big movies with some of the huge stars from the Telugu film industry. But like right now, recently, like Pushpa 2 came out and I was able to see that in IMAX here, which is like unheard of. Like those movies, we don't get them in IMAX.
That wasn't a thing that would happen. Yeah, I think you did a podcast.
And it was like, it just blew my mind to be able to see this in IMAX. Like I'm in a theater in Hyderabad, only like I'm like in Denver being able to watch this. Like it was so cool, like to be able to do that. Cause I'm like, man, usually like it's me and like, one other person in the theater, and it's like the smallest theater in the multiplex, and it plays for like a week. And they're like, we'll have that Indian movie. It'll be here for 4 days. And then whatever the next big Hollywood thing is, we'll take up 17 screens and knock it out of there. And it's like, it was crazy to be able to see something like Pushpa that's like, this is in the IMAX theater for like at least a week. Like that was crazy. So I think, I hope that means like we can have access to these things more. And I mean, I think too, like all of these movies are signing these huge deals with like Netflix and Prime, and you'll even see in the credits, like exclusive streaming partner, Amazon Prime before some of these. And so I think there is a bigger effort to like also get these things on streaming to where it's like, and it's available that way too. So that's been my biggest thing, is like just hunting down a lot of these movies in like with subtitles, has been like part of the journey for me, is like, where can I find this? What streamer has it? And do they have it with subtitles? And thankfully, a lot of the older ones are on YouTube with subtitles, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating though. Like, the world only has like 8 billion people in it, right? Like, and 1.4 billion of them are like in India, or at least Indian. Like, and so it makes it kind of like a company like Netflix that's trying to be worldwide, or a company like HBO Max that's trying to be worldwide, or Amazon Prime that's trying to be worldwide. Like, it makes sense for them to be like, hey, there's a market of 1.4 billion people that like maybe we're not really tapping into here, and maybe we should try to get more of these movies onto our our streaming service. Like it kind of wouldn't make any sense to just do like, oh well, we'll do American movies for Americans. We don't have 1 billion people here. Like,
and I mean, having access to kind of like niche streaming services is so huge too. There's like Eros, which I think is the like Bollywood one, and then like I subscribe to AHA, which is like a Telugu and Tamil streaming service, because I'm just like, they have these movies sometimes with subtitles. Like I can find them there, So
well, that's half the battle a lot of times with like world cinema. If it's not a Janus Contemporary on Criterion Channel or Movie or something like that.
For real, I'm like waiting for. I'm like, can Criterion do like a DVD or like a Blu-ray of RRR, because I would really like a physical release of this.
Take
and
my
I don't
money,
want to have
please.
to get a region-free Blu-ray player to do it.
Right, I know, right. It's my special player for it, right?
It's interesting. They have that Z5 thing, and now I'm getting ads for it because I checked it out. But like now I'm getting ads for it on YouTube. But the
new sponsor
pitch or whatever. The pitch that they have is like watch in your language. But like specifically for Indian movies, so it's like watching your I think they're trying to consolidate.
That's where you get all the dubs and stuff. Yeah, they'll be like either subtitled ones or dubs of different things a lot of the time too.
But you're so right. A movie like this really should be seen in like a theater. It's just such a different experience. You talk about that with Wicked, and like I got to see this in a art house theater, just like you described, which is still a theater, but it's not quite And
you don't get
so
that
it is-
epic experience. And this is such a fun one too to see with an audience. Like that was one of the things I loved the most about seeing Pushpa recently was like I got to see it and there were like a bunch of people in the theater and people will be like whistling and cheering and clapping and it's like that's such a nice thing to experience in a movie. Like I want to see, you know, they always do with a lot of these stars like sort of a like a title card drop for the star in a lot of these movies. So you'll have the hero like literally you'll have like the hero has this big introduction that'll be like in slow motion and then like they'll kind of like turn toward the camera and it'll like freeze frame and it'll literally put up like their nickname. So like, you know, it'll have like Rebel Star Prabhas, you know, or something on there. And that's when everybody just like goes crazy in the theater. And like, it's usually just me in my house watching this and being you know, but it's so nice when you're in a theater and you can put that together.
I love Megastar and like Man of Masses as nicknames for
it's like for sure.
Yeah, it's like I'm every man, and it's like
for sure,
every man.
I feel like the nicknames. It's like that's such my favorite part of this. Like I love like Allu Arjun was Stylish Star, and now he's Icon Star, and I just love like following those because I'm like, yes, love it.
Like,
I like the evolution.
Totally, it's like you achieve a certain level, and it's like, oh, we got to bump this up, you know.
Gandalf the Grey becomes Gandalf the White. You got to do something.
It's like the Indian version of Spice Girls. It's like you scary Spice.
Yeah, it's like Mega Power Star Ram Charan becomes Global Star Ram Charan, you know.
All right, so Letterboxd is a place film lovers talk at with and to each other about the films that they love, maybe the films they didn't love, maybe the films that they spent most of their review shipping the two leads in. Who knows? Not for me to say. Everybody gets to chime and opine on this, not just the skulls and earbuds of the world, to bottom-up democracy. Everyone gets to have their say. And of course, this is best expressed succinctly for the purpose of this bit, where the movies we cover each week, I gather up all of the different reviews for us to put on the screen, read out, laugh, and react to. These are the Letterboxd one-liners for RRR. Let's roll. Lol, if you guys thought I was too hard on Hollywood blockbusters before I saw this.
When's the last blockbuster that we saw where they start singing in the middle of it and then like they do it? That's not like a musical, but like when's the last one that, you know, like it's crazy that every single one of these that I've seen, like they start dancing and singing in the middle of like a thing, like it does the Lord of the Rings thing well or something like that, right? And then it's like, imagine if in the middle of Lord of the Rings they had just broken out in song and dance and everyone was like,
which honestly I would have been on board for.
Yeah. You know, it's coming. It's coming. Wicked is too big of a hit for that not to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of singing in the cartoon one. You're right.
You're right. Oh my God, there's so much singing. Like I forgot how much singing there was.
Just those two songs though, just The Greatest Adventure and Will There Be Whippers Away. But that's
where there's a whip, whoosh, there's a way. Yeah. Exactly. By the way, good whip work in this is what we didn't even get to cover.
Oh, yes.
Great whip work.
No movie has earned the title card doesn't appear until 40 minutes into the movie more than RRR.
Yeah.
Eat your heart out, Drive My Car.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't have made sense from the beginning. You're like RRR, but it makes sense as soon as they're together and he has the flag and it's like, fuck,
yes.
like,
yeah,
totally.
It's good. Somehow equal parts summer blockbuster, video game cutscene, musical, bromance, drama, and historical epic. Listen, I can't explain it either.
Yeah,
friend of the show, Slim.
It's good because it's all the things.
From
like
70
7-layer dip of films.
Exactly.
Really is, it does it all. Does it all. What do you want? It does it. Bro, he punched a tiger. Holy shit, still awesome.
It's crazy.
Hashtag feed on that.
It's crazy to have like multiple scenes where people throw tigers at each other.
Not once, but multiple times. You're right. Yeah, that is
once, twice, 3 times. The tiger.
And because it's a party, nobody's like they don't have like their muskets. They have to load 50 times to, you know.
Are you ever going to be prepared for that though? I mean,
really, you know.
The third one, it's on you. It's happened twice already. Like,
well. I guess that's a good point.
It just doesn't seem like they teach them very well at the Raj.
Tiger me once, shame on me.
Tiger me twice. Exactly. People are talking about this more and more.
Just imagine like Winston Churchill being like, "You must prepare for tiger attacks."
Indian Point Break.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. More.
Keanu Raju. You know?
There you go. If you and the homie can't hatch an elaborate plot to launch a flaming motorcycle into the TNT room of a heavily guarded palace through nothing but 2 hand gestures, are you even homies?
Dude,
So
they're
much
not even
TNT in there.
Well, I guess by that point they're homies, but they're doing the hand motions before they were homies.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, they already saved the kid on the bridge with nothing but hand motions, you know? So you knew they were going to be able to do it.
Like,
Yeah.
he does the like pulling of the 2 hands, which like I would not get that. I would
I'm
not
like,
get
what?
anything.
Yeah.
You need to both swing off of the
Oh my
bridge.
God.
I would
Forrest,
be like,
can you imagine if it was you and me? Like, what? What are you saying? I don't know what you're saying. Text me. I don't know.
wait, but two. Are you trying to fight? Are you trying to?
What?
Why are the hands?
Everybody was
You trying to fist bump?
Wait, that's wrong. That's wrong.
Yeah. Exactly. Respect. That's what I'm saying. No greater joy than seeing racist white people getting their shit rocked at the end of this movie.
Hell yeah.
Facts.
Hell yeah.
They're racist in such like a cartoonish way too. Like the guys.
Oh yeah.
Look at all these brown people, and it's like,
Yeah, totally.
Right.
like,
Given
bro,
the size of the British Empire, highly relatable for so many people.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Aren't coming.
Touche.
For real. For real.
But he even says, look at all these brown buggers, and it's like, all right, even for the
my God,
British
right.
Empire, you need to calm
I
down.
mean,
real.
kudos on the
And even like the people around him are like, you can't say that. Like,
Damn, man. Yeah.
What the fuck, dude? Chill
The other
out.
racists are like, bro, you're crossing a line.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly.
Look, beat them up if you want to beat them up, but like, don't call them brown buggers.
Yeah. The other racists are wincing when you're talking. That's a bad sign.
You know it's bad when the other racists cringe.
Yes.
And the one guy too. He's like, what do you know about the tango, the flamenco? And it's like, bro, they're gonna show you a dance that you're not gonna be able to even
Awesome.
comprehend.
I love that guy. I feel like that guy, like, shout out to that guy for doing such a great job of being a horrible little villain like him.
A prat,
Well,
as they say.
that actor
Yeah,
looks like a
heel.
British Nazi. Like that actor does have like the Hitler Youth haircut and everything going on almost like.
Yeah. The empire destroying power of chilling with your bro.
Preach.
Only one thing can defeat the empire.
Yeah.
For real.
Chill with your bro.
Just dudes
like-
being bros, destroying an empper.
I love
you
I
do.
love that they have no power to do anything like separately the entire time, right? They get getting captured, but the second they come together, it's like
Unstoppable.
yeah, like you guys are gonna do it.
A Wonder Twin.
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Contains the best piggyback ride action sequence in cinematic history, and
I
that
think
is
that-
Jack Jack.
You could certainly
Or-
argue that's the case.
I think that's like that. Well, I guess them hanging off the bridge was the moment that I was like, okay, I'm in this, I'm engaged. But like then the piggyback sequence was like another moment where I was like I gotta find out what happens at the end of this.
Yeah, tell me you're not
I'd be
having a good
curious.
time watching.
I'd be curious, what was for each of you guys, what was sort of the moment with this where you watched it and like, was there a moment where you were like, holy shit, this is the best thing I've ever seen? Like, was
Oh,
there
I'm with
a
Forrest when it was
particular-
the whole bridge sequence. I was like,
Yeah.
all right, cool, man.
I don't
I'm
know
good.
it too. Like, I don't because you see him like you see him fight the tiger and it's like that's pretty badass. But then they're hanging off a bridge and then he has the flag and he goes into the fire and you're like, oh fuck, did he just? And then he comes out of the fire and you're like, oh,
It's so awesome.
It's so rad.
And for me, it's like
human
every
pyramid.
single time they're jumping, their body awareness is so good. It's like a circus performer. Like toes are
Totally.
pointed,
Yeah,
angles are great.
We could
Who
tell
did
they're
a gazelle?
dancers for sure.
Oh my
Yeah.
fucking
You know,
God, yes. I think that was what got me was how incredibly athletic and aware all the body acting was from like scene one.
for sure. I think there's a scene where Charan is gonna go arrest that guy and he like jumps over the fence.
No.
And it's like just the shot of him jumping over the fence. I literally think that was when I went like, okay, this might be my favorite thing that I've seen all year.
Yes.
Exactly.
I love a good movie where I love a good movie period, but I love a good movie where they give you like a theme song that it tells you what's going on, but it's not like this is this person and this person. So it's like I love the Dosti song they have going.
Totally.
So much of it where it's like two friends that are one of them is free will and destiny, and then they're like one of them is like fire and one of them is the storm. Like they have that whole
So
thing
good.
going. I'm like,
It's like
I
this
love
is
when
the entire
yeah.
premise of the movie in this one song, and also the song is awesome.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Take
Fucking
notes.
slaps.
Take notes.
They're like,
For
and then
sure.
they're like, will this end in bloodshed at the end? Like that's the last line of it, and it comes back as soon as they're fighting again. Like,
Who needs physics when you have friendship?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the
Ain't it the
same
truth?
thought watching Bahubali, like the second part, where just at the end of it, they just clearly give up on physics, and he's
For
just
sure.
like, yeah, and I'm like I don't need physics at this point. Like this is hour 5.
Yeah,
Totally.
good.
Physics has not been like a giant sort of like South Indian blockbuster. We don't need physics. That's not what it's about. You know, like it's
I-
like
Where we're
this
going,
isn't
we don't
important.
need physics. Yeah.
Exactly.
If you jump with enough style and focus your chi, you fall slower. You do.
I feel like
For real.
Indian Neil deGrasse Tyson is just dead. He's like,
It's like gravity's different in these movies. Don't worry about it. You know?
Those are the Letterboxd one-liners for RRR. Please follow the show at our Letterboxd HQ account at Movie Night Extra, where we have stories of all the great movies that we cover, great episodes on this show, as well as bonus content, attendant features, things along those lines. Follow along for that. Not to. At Always Flacco, Forrest, our host over there. He's watching. He's going deep in Tollywood. I'm gonna be real with you. He's going deeper than I've gone with it. So follow him for that, as well as all the other great stuff that we do in this show and many other things. I am RRR, really, really rad, at Conan Neutron. Follow me for the Highbrow, Midbrow, Populous Fair, as well as the Criterion Challenge every year. You still time to join up. There's always time. You can join the last week if you felt so inclined. But follow me along for that. Kt Baldassaro down there is doing it as well, so you can engage with us, and that's a good time and a good way to get into world cinema, I might add, if you're doing it correctly, or even if you're not doing it correctly. I mean, let's be real.
I watched Beastie Boys videos for my first week.
I was gonna say that's not gonna get you into world cinema, but it was an enjoyable experience, right? I mean, anyway. Kristina over there, Triple R, Adam,
is that your
Kristina.
wrestling name?
Yes.
Triple R.
Triple R.
I
There
know
you
she's
go,
in
there
those
you go.
movies. Like there's Triple X and then there's Triple I.
Better
Yeah.
than Triple K, right?
Yeah,
Triple K is the guy that's like,
probably
look at all
wise
those
to avoid
crowds.
that.
That's Ray Stevenson's favorite wrestler. Anyway, moving on. In this movie only, thank you. No one has been said that. Adam Kristina on Letterboxd. You can follow her there. She's logging stuff. You've been a logging kick lately, so you can follow her and see what she's going on. What you got going on. Movie Runtime, Kt Baldassaro, aforementioned Kt Baldassaro down there, also doing Letterboxd. The Criterion Challenge with me, but also her great show, What If I Don't Like It? As well as actual movie runtime, and of course all the main things for this. And every once in a while I hear she even watches a movie for fun. So follow her along.
I don't tell you about those ones. I keep them to myself.
Keep to yourself. Exactly. Don't want to get judged for
Well,
it.
you gotta have something for yourself, right? Like,
Right. And then, of course, our lovely guest, Alexis, Trashwire is her Letterboxd handle. We'll get into your regular plugs as well, but great follow. Definitely not sorry that I followed Alexis Gentry at Letterboxd at Trashwire at all. And in fact, it was this movie that was like, all right, yeah, she's in. When I saw that, I was like, all right, yeah.
This is
yeah,
when you were like,
that's-
oh, okay.
Yep. Our people.
We
That's
were,
our
you know,
people.
we saw each other from across like by a bridge. We just did like a hand gesture.
I threw you the kid, you threw me the flag. Yeah.
you put in the letterbox, like typing on your phone. And,
Yeah, exactly.
and you're like,
We threw each other phones and finished each other's reviews. Sure. Yeah.
Perfect.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess that'd be the equivalent. Let's hit with the plugs.
if you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and then hit the bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. And we'd humbly request that you watch the video to the end, because it helps us with the algorithm and helps more film fans to discover the show. We're also monetized. If you want to get your chat questions definitely read on stream, you can always send us a super chat, which will help us keep the show going. Every cent helps. If you're watching on Twitch, you can gift us a free sub on Amazon Prime with your Prime membership, but getting subs on Twitch is always appreciated, and it helps to follow us on there as well. We also have an audio feed, which is available wherever you download podcasts, if you prefer to listen to podcasts rather than watch the stream. That's updated usually the same day we stream, but watching on YouTube and Twitch is the best way to get the show first, live as it happens. If you want to support us with a monthly donation and get access to all of our after parties forever, which go patron only after we do them, you can become a patron at patreon.com/movie night extra. Link is in the description for that. It really helps us keep the show going since we do have some expenses to make this happen. We also have a Discord community. Link is in the description for that. We sometimes watch movies we cover on there. We get into conversations about everything from film to TV shows to related podcasts. We even have a Discord channel for memes. It's really fun on there. You can find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and Threads. You connect with us on all of those. Talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, we recently made a TikTok at Movie Night Extra where we're putting up short form clips from the episodes. Okay, passing this to Conan so he can tell you about his music and this week's Protonic Reversal. Conan, who's on Protonic this week?
Yeah. So it's the folks from Camera Obscura, not the Scottish indie rock band, but the San Diego hardcore band. They're doing a reissue on Solid Brass. It's great. So I'm really excited about that. Talking to them, maybe the first interview I've ever heard from them. So that'll be interesting to see. Jim Kimball from Laughing Hyenas, Jesus Lizard, Mule, and Ghost Forest is going up into the free feed tomorrow. And if you want to be in the patreon.com/ProtonicReversal, $1 a month for advance access. That's what's going on there. So much Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends news, and I keep saying it every week. Maybe one of these weeks I'll actually be ready to announce it. But I got 3 tours to announce and a new record. So there you go. I'll tell you what that is. And one of them is not in this country. So there you go.
I know about it.
I know. Forrest knows. Kristina, what do you got?
Well, we did the Shadow Saturday, and we got to the point where Barnabas becomes a vampire. Woo! Finally, it got to the point. We got like 30 episodes left of like the 1795 storyline because everyone's like, "When are we gonna?" I'm like, "It's good. Just wait. You gotta keep watching." And what the hell else? Oh, we watched Wicked in my Discord. Everyone loved it. And of course I'm going to stream after this because my sleeping schedule's messed up and I only have like 2 houses to do tomorrow and take the kitties to get their rabies shots. So we're going to cover Bernie Sanders being on Hassan's stream. We're going to, cover the fact that everyone's going to Red Note, an actual Chinese owned social media platform, and a bunch of other stuff that's been going on in the news because there's been a lot. I mean, Republicans are now saying California ain't getting shit unless it's conditional aid, and I'm like, fuck you guys. So
yeah, what a shocking development that is. That's never happened before.
Yeah. So lots of news.
Cool.
All right, Katie, what do you have going on?
Oh, just waiting to see what happens to TikTok. Going over to
stay of execution.
Onto YouTube. So you'll seeing me much more on YouTube. Please subscribe to my channel, which is under the same name, and you can see me in the chats talking. Trying to get a lot of the shorts and stuff ported over there. Booting up a website for myself, so you'll be seeing that shortly, which will have all of the podcast information, booking information, getting some stuff written on other websites, and just focusing a little bit more on that. So keep an eye on me on social media. You'll see a lot of those announcements coming out, as well as February's episode of What If I Don't Like It is shortly due.
All right.
Yeah.
Any hints on that? Oh, I know the What If I Don't Like It episode. Any hints, or is it still a surprise?
We're reformatting vastly in the second season, so I'm going to try and do a thing where part 1 is going to be truncated, and I've put some feelers out to larger guests, and I'm just waiting to hear back from a few people's schedules. I do know that Harry will be joining me at some point. We're working on the movie, so we'll go from there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I got some good news. A bunch of TikTok creators are creating like the blue sky for TikTok called Neptune, and I signed up just to see what it will be like when it comes out.
All right.
Nice. I do enjoy
Nature
the people
finds
who
a
are
way.
commenting on Red Note, that people are like, "Hey, we're here from America." I love the already existent Chinese users who are commenting, "Hello, I am your personally assigned spy. Nice to meet you."
Yeah.
One of the worst people I've ever seen, and he was like, "Ni hao" on the technical.
So a lot of stuff coming out. Just keep an eye on my social media. Subscribe. You'll see things shortly.
Very good.
All right, Alexis, let's hear these plugs.
All right. Well, you can find me at Trashwire on YouTube. I'm trying to, because the fate of TikTok is not certain, which I love TikTok. I love making stuff there, but YouTube is kind of becoming my primary thing. I know. I'm like, it's just like, I think about it and I'm like, oh, I don't even want to think about it. But yeah, YouTube is kind of my primary video channel now. I just published a review of Ram Charan's movie Game Changer. You can always find me also at trashwire.com. I just put everything there. So it's like, if ever you're like, where is she? Where is any of this stuff? Trashwire.com. It's there. Don't worry. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram at Alexis Gentry, but also at Trashwire, on Threads, all across all the different things. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but it is what it is. All these, we're all going to condense into like 2 social networks from now on.
Yeah,
so we'll
they're
see how it
talking about
goes.
they're talking about Elon maybe buying TikTok, which would be the worst of all worlds. I feel like.
Wow.
Just
Yeah,
ban it
for
then.
real.
Just ban it. Just ban it. Apparently, Ford, like, stop him from getting the Saudis to buy Twitter for him. Like, come on now.
Let's just bring back LiveJournal on MySpace. How about that?
Yeah, it's like at this point, I'm just going to start yelling into the wind, and that's going to be my social network.
Exactly.
Zuckerberg was
You'll see
willing
me
to give Tom
more.
Anderson Facebook for $75 million, and Tom Anderson of MySpace said no. And I'm like,
But yeah, he doesn't want. He doesn't want that.
We wouldn't be in the utopia at the end of Megalopolis. That's what we'd all be living in if that had happened.
we took Tom for granted.
But yeah, I'm all over those places. And then my podcast is called What You Watchin'. That's on all the podcast things. I'm on Letterboxd at Trashwire. You can see I've been doing a Ravi Teja movie binge watch that is ill-advised, but pretty fun. And I have my list there of the 100+ South Indian films that I've watched. And I'm always looking for recommendations. If I can find them with English subtitles, I will watch them because I'm way into it. So like, feel free to at me somewhere and recommend something to me.
And speaking of, Telugu cinema, Indian cinema, do you have some final thoughts on RRR?
I feel like this movie is such a phenomenal example of blending like spectacle, emotion, and doing it in a way that is not cynical. Totally fun. Works on many layers, and it was the thing that made me sort of start this huge binge and deep dive and everything. And now some of my favorite movies that I've ever watched have been involved sort of in this journey. So thank you to RRR for being the gateway drug for me to this like beautiful world of South Indian cinema.
Yeah, you got me hooked on the Bahuli thing. I wasn't planning on watching the entirety of it, and then I just ended up 6 hours into it, going like.
You got to try his movie Iga
That's
next.
good, Rick. I like that.
The protagonist of that movie is a CGI housefly, and I'm gonna tell you, it is fucking awesome.
Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
good.
It rules.
They're gonna remake that with Jeff Goldblum as
Yeah.
No other.
Katie. Final thoughts.
Yeah, it's just such joyous spectacle. Like, it is truly the feeling that you assume 13-year-olds get when they watch The Rock the first time. You're just so in it to win it. The spectacle is great. You do question the physics. The number of times that I went, oh, fuck, is astronomical. And, like, anything that you would have said, like, oh, he hit a guy with another motorcycle, you have to rephrase that. He hit a guy with another motorcycle. It's so peculiar that a film could be this long, subtitled, musical, and yet everything is great. It does everything in such a way that it is the best version of itself. So if you haven't seen it, definitely worth your time. And yeah, it's just good.
It makes sense once you like look at how long it took to shoot it, right? Like, because they have the 2 years before COVID and then the 2 years after COVID. Like, oh, all right, like that checks out for how much that movie was able to do. You know?
Yeah, and the budget on this is like 2 times that of Dusk Till Dawn. It's like $75 million to make this movie, and you're like, it's 20 for Dusk Till Dawn.
How many Dusk Till Dawns make this movie? That's the unit of measurement.
That's my unit of measurement for everything, because they use paper cardboard vampires at the end, and I get a little angry.
Because they ran out of money. Yeah.
But Kristina, final thoughts.
In a film that does everything, and I do mean everything, in a world of Emilia Perez's being RRR.
Light him up.
100%. Conan, final thought.
Still one of the most thrilling and entertaining movies in the last 10 years for my taste. It's a unicorn. And I think it's, like I mentioned, it's deeply predictable and annoying that the Academy only chose to recognize it for Best Song, but the song does go hard. And I think any filmmaker, big, especially franchises, but small budget filmmakers can just study this movie to realize how much what you can do with what you have. Just a treat of a film. And it's great to discuss it. Forrest, Kristina, I was trying to get us to cover this. Like, what was out? And we finally got to it now. So glad to do it with you, Alexis. It's a great pleasure to be doing with someone who loves it.
The only way that I was gonna be able to sit there and watch the entire 3 hours also is like covering it, right? Because
right.
my attention span just is fucked. Like,
I believe that's why I never mentioned the runtime.
Like, it's that millennial thing of you can't enjoy anything. Everything has to be part of, like, everything has to be content, or everything has to be monetized, or everything. So it's like, I want to enjoy this, but I need to turn it into content.
Yeah.
I want to talk about it too, because there's so much to talk about. And 2 years later, 2 years later, 3 years, 2.5 years later,
like,
here we are.
I'm fine with like 90-minute films. I'm like, I'll watch it for fun. I don't need to ever talk about this. But like, as soon as it gets past that 2 hour mark, right, I'm like, I gotta turn this into. I gotta justify in my head the time spent watching. Like,
we did an episode on Hitman. Yeah, hey.
Yeah, and I would have watched Hitman again and just
not even thought about it ever again.
Yeah,
it's good. Hitman, everybody.
And then Kristina wasn't even on for that episode. We were like, we'll have Kristina on for that, and we'll talk about Hitman. And then she had to work the next day or something.
By the way, next week, Lost Highway with Marta McFly and Ravana. So it's a very packed month.
I'm ready to talk about Lost Highway.
There it is. And then Sweet Smell of Success with Harry Marks too. After that, so.
Those are gonna be good. I like that we went from like a bunch of weeks where we didn't have guests because we were doing like newer stuff, and we were kind of reformatting stuff to like now it's guest January,
wall to wall. I know, exactly.
And I'll have a intro ready for like the actual like I'll switch it up for next week. I was watching too many Telugu films to get it done.
Okay,
that's how it happens, man.
Yeah.
I'm
it's hard to watch things for enjoyment. It's okay. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, exactly.
You're the one who was like, first one's for free, guys.
Totally.
Right.
I'm like, just try this Rajamouli movie, and the next thing you know, you're binge watching like a 1-star Ravi Teja movie marathon in your house. So this is
gateway drug, and for the podcast listeners, it's 3 R's. It's RRR. There's been a lot of that.
R's, yeah.
You're like living in like a broken down car because you watched too many of them. You forgot to pay rent or whatever, and you're just like, oh, I need some more of that Telugu cinema, man.
I'm like missing deadlines at work because I'm like watching like a picture-in-picture like subtitled movie or something.
Using the Wi-Fi in a car at a hotel because you were like in the parking lot. You're like, I didn't pay my bills. All right. Well, join us for next week for Lost Highway. We're going to have a good time.